8 children gone in less than 70 minutes. And the man responsible was someone they called Daddy. Before we go any further, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now because we cover stories like this with full depth, full truth, and nothing left out. Drop a like if you want justice for these babies. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because this story out of Shreveport, Louisiana, has people all across the country, all across the world, completely shaken. Now stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through is not just a tragedy. It is a story full of warnings that nobody took seriously. A weapon that should never have existed in those hands. A woman lying in a hospital bed, saying she does not even understand the words he said to her right before he pulled that trigger. And an arrest that has just been made that changes everything we thought we knew about how this all happened. So do not go anywhere. We are starting from the very end and working our way back, because that is the only way this story truly makes sense. It is 7:03 in the morning on the 19th of April, 2026. A 1-year-old man named Shamar Elkins is pronounced dead in Bossier City, Louisiana, in the 400 block of Brompton Lane. Less than 2 hours earlier, he was a father, a husband, a veteran, a man some people in his neighborhood called a soldier. Now he is at the center of one of the deadliest domestic tragedies the state of Louisiana has ever recorded. 8 children are dead, 2 women are fighting for their lives, and a community that woke up on a quiet Sunday morning is now trying to understand how something this catastrophic could unfold in 68 minutes and nobody could stop it. But here is where the story gets complicated. Here is where it gets layered. Because Shamar Elkins did not just snap. This was not random. This was not unpredictable to everyone around him. There were people who knew. There were words spoken years ago that everyone dismissed. And now those words are sitting at the center of a criminal investigation, a federal arrest, and a grieving family that is left asking one question over and over again. Why? Now I need you to think about something before we go deeper. The morning this happened, the very first 911 call did not come from inside the house. It came from the roof. A woman clinging to the edge of a rooftop in the early morning darkness, whispering into a phone, trying not to make a sound. She told dispatchers there was a man inside shooting. She told them there were children in that house. That call came in at 5:55 in the morning. By 5:59, dispatchers already knew the name Shamar Elkins. By 6:01, officers were on the scene. And by 6:03, they were making contact with survivors. But for the children inside that home on West 79th Street, 6:01 was already too late. Now let me take you back. Not to that morning, not to the shooting. Let me take you back to a conversation that happened years before any of this. A conversation between Shamar Elkins and his wife that everyone in the family knew about, but nobody truly believed. According to his adoptive mother, Shamar once looked his wife in the eyes during an argument and told her plainly, "If you ever try to leave me, if you ever file for divorce, I will kill this entire family." His wife heard those words. Family members heard those words. And what did they do with them? They called it venting. They called it emotion talking. They said he was just playing. He was not playing. Fast forward to April 2026. The marriage had reached a point of no return. There was reported infidelity. There were financial pressures tearing the household apart. His wife had made her decision. She was done. And the two of them were actually scheduled to appear in court the very next day, April 20th, to finalize their legal separation. One day, she was one single day away from that chapter being closed, and Shamar Elkins could not live with that. Now here is something that investigators have confirmed and that I want you to sit with for a moment. They do not believe he had a detailed, calculated plan when he walked into that house. What they believe is that his singular intention was to make sure nobody inside that home survived. No plan beyond that, just destruction, just rage. Just the execution of a threat that he had made years ago that every single person around him had chosen to ignore. And I have to pause here because this is important. His wife did not just lose her children that morning. She was shot herself. She was struck in the face. She survived. And while she was still in the hospital, barely recovering, still processing what had happened to her family, a reporter asked her one question. What did he mean when he said, "You caused this"? And her answer was heartbreaking in its honesty. She said she did not know. She genuinely did not understand what he meant by those words. She had asked him why, and his response was 3 words: "You caused this." That is the last thing she heard from the father of her children before chaos consumed everything. Now, I want to bring in a layer of this story that most people are not talking about enough. Because Shamar Elkins did not just go to one home that morning. After leaving West 79th Street, after 5 children were already dead or dying, after his wife had been shot, after her sister had jumped off a roof and broken her hip trying to survive, he did not run. He did not hide. He walked to another home just blocks away. And that home belonged to the mother of his 3 other children. Think about that for a second. He had children in 2 separate households, 7 of his own children, spread across 2 homes within walking distance of each other. And on the morning of the 19th of April, 2026, he visited both of them. He shot the second woman too, but she survived. And despite being injured, she managed to call dispatchers and tell them that he had taken her 3 children with him when he fled. Now police were not just looking for a shooter. They were looking for a man with 3 children in a stolen vehicle, driving at high speed through the streets of Shreveport and Bossier City, running red lights on Interstate 20, heading east. Officers were on the radio warning each other, "Be advised, there may be children in that vehicle." Let that image sit with you. Officers chasing a car through Louisiana highways, not knowing if those babies inside were alive or hurt or terrified. That is the reality of what April 19th looked like from inside those police radios. Now here is where I need you to drop a like on this video if you are still with me, because what comes next is where this case takes a turn that nobody expected. And I want to make sure this information reaches as many people as possible. And while you are at it, tell me in the comments, do you think the system failed these children? Because what I am about to share about Shamar Elkins' criminal history and how he got access to a weapon is going to make your stomach drop. Go ahead and subscribe if you have not already, because we are only halfway through and there is still so much more you need to know. Now, the weapon. This is where federal investigators got involved. Shamar Elkins was a convicted felon. That is not a rumor. That is documented. Back in March of 2019, he was charged with 2 felonies in connection with a road rage incident where he allegedly pulled out a 9mm handgun and fired 5 rounds. One of those bullets landed near a high school with students present. That is the kind of charge that should follow a person for the rest of their life. That is the kind of record that bars someone permanently from ever legally owning or possessing a firearm again. But here is what actually happened in that courtroom. Prosecutors cut a deal. The school's own firearms charge, the more serious of the 2 felonies, was dropped. In exchange, he pleaded guilty to the lesser charge, illegal use of a weapon, and his punishment, 18 months of probation, $71 a month. That is what the judge decided was appropriate for a man who fired a gun near children. No prison time, no rehabilitation program, no serious intervention, just probation and a monthly fee. And this was not even his first offense. 4 years earlier in 2015, he had been convicted of driving under the influence. Again, the punishment was probation, 6 months of it, 2 chances. 2 times the system looked at Shamar Elkins and said, "We trust you to do better." 2 times that trust was extended without accountability. And now 8 children are gone. But here is the twist that nobody saw coming. When investigators started tracing the rifle used in the attack, because yes, a rifle was involved, not just a handgun, they discovered that the weapon had traveled through multiple hands before it ever reached Shamar Elkins. A woman had originally purchased the firearm legally. She then transferred it to a 5-6-year-old man named Charles Ford. And Charles Ford, it turns out, is also a convicted felon, meaning he also had zero legal right to possess any firearm of any kind. But he had it. He carried it under the seat of his vehicle. And when federal agents from the ATF came to ask him about it after the shooting, he lied to their faces. Charles Ford has now been arrested. He is facing up to 15 years in federal prison for felony possession of a firearm and up to 5 additional years for making false statements to federal investigators. The ATF moved fast on this, and it matters. Because while no prosecution of Charles Ford will bring back a single one of those 8 children, it closes one of the most painful gaps in this case. How did a man who was legally forbidden from touching a gun end up with a rifle capable of killing 8 children in under 70 minutes? Now we know. Now there is accountability attached to that question, and this case has reached the highest levels of attention in the country. The governor of Louisiana confirmed receiving a direct call from President Donald Trump, who expressed condolences for the victims and the community of Shreveport. Federal officials pledged resources. FBI Director Kash Patel committed to supporting local law enforcement. A moment of silence was held on the House floor, and yet the families on West 79th Street are still burying children. Now let me tell you about the man who knew Shamar longest, a mentor, a man who described himself as a father figure in the absence of Shamar's biological father, someone Shamar called uncle, someone who had helped raise him, known him since he was young, watched him grow up and go into the National Guard and become a father himself. On the morning of April 19th, after the shootings, after the car chase through Bossier City, Shamar Elkins ended up at this man's door. Not by accident, not by coincidence. He went there because it was the one place in his world where he believed he was still safe, still loved, still accepted. This mentor said his security cameras triggered that morning. He heard a familiar voice. He opened the door, and what followed ended with Shamar Elkins dead. Authorities say there was an exchange of gunfire with police. Officers confirmed that the suspect was struck by police gunfire, but this mentor came forward publicly and offered a different account of how the end actually came. Out of respect for the ongoing investigation and the platform I'm speaking on, I cannot walk through every detail of that account. What I can tell you is that there is a genuine conflict between what police have confirmed and what this man who was present says he witnessed, and that conflict has not been resolved. Now here is something else this mentor said that I think is important. He spoke with Shamar the day before everything happened. They talked about the divorce, about the court date, about what Shamar was feeling, and he said he saw nothing. No alarm, no signal that the next morning Shamar would be responsible for the deaths of 8 children. How do you have that conversation with someone and not see it coming? How does someone sit across from a person they love and have a calm discussion about a divorce and then hours later do something this catastrophic? That question does not have a clean answer. And I think that is what makes this case linger. It is not just a story about a bad man who did a terrible thing. It is a story about warning signs that existed years in advance, a threat that was spoken out loud and dismissed, a criminal record that was minimized by a system designed to hold people accountable, a weapon that passed through at least 3 sets of hands before it reached someone who used it to kill children, and a man who in his final hours drove to the one person who made him feel safe and arrived with blood on his hands. A father in this community, a man who lost his 10-year-old son in that home on West 79th Street, took to social media in the days after and wrote something that stopped me completely. He said he lost 8 of the most beautiful people in the world in one morning. His nieces, his nephews, his son. He said his heart was hurting so badly he could barely speak. He said people kept calling to ask if he was okay. And he told them plainly, "No, I am not okay. I am not going to be okay for a while." These were 8 babies, and he was right. They were 8 babies. Some of them just old enough to ask their uncle for a banana, old enough to ask their daddy for a bag of chips, old enough to have a whole future ahead of them, and now that future belongs only to memory. So before I close this video, I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to actually think about this before you answer in the comments. If someone you love said the words, "I will kill this entire family if you ever leave me," would you take it seriously? Or would you do what so many people in this story did and call it emotion, call it venting, call it just playing? Because the answer to that question matters, not just in this case, but in every household, in every city, in every country where those words have been said and dismissed, where the warning existed and nobody acted on it. That is where I want to leave you today, not with rage, not with just grief, but with that question sitting heavy on your chest the way it is sitting on mine. If you are watching this from Shreveport, from Louisiana, from anywhere across the United States or around the world, and this story has hit you, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me what you think needs to change so that the next family, the next community, the next group of children does not face what West 79th Street faced on the 19th of April, 2026. Subscribe if you are not already part of this channel, because we cover cases like this until there are real answers and real accountability. Drop a like so this video reaches more people. And most importantly, say a prayer for every child whose name we have yet to even fully learn. 8 babies, gone in 68 minutes, and a community that will never be the same.